And at the end of the day, you bring up a great point, because whether we're talking in person, whether we're talking virtual, people are still going to make decisions thinking about what's best for them. We're people at the end of the day. We're going to focus on what's best for us. When I think about the economic perspective of real estate, I have a saying I like: the market will dictate. I think the same is true for HOAs when we think about our leadership and we think about, are the decisions being made in line with what we as a membership want? The market will dictate that, and over time, people will say something. You bring up a concept of kindness. There's a group that I think catches a lot of slack in North Carolina: management companies. I think a lot of management companies catch a lot of slack for one reason and one reason only.
Now, you're saying slack or flack?
A little bit of both. We'll go with both, depending on your perspective, right? So management companies catch a lot because of the fees. And if I think about transfer fees, I'm going to throw a curveball at you because I know we didn't talk about transfer fees prior to, but $250 cap, right? Is it $250 or $200 cap on assessment, on a statement of assessments? Remind me of that one off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember.
There is a statute that deals with statement of unpaid assessments. I wouldn't call it a transfer fee because, there's even a case that says those aren't transfer fees. A transfer fee is if you buy a piece of property and the declaration or the deed requires you to pay money somewhere. But you're talking about the statement of unpaid assessments. And there is a cap on how much you can charge so many days before, so many days after. And again, we represent associations, not management companies. I will tell you, though, I'm told regularly by the management companies that those are not as simple as they might seem to be to give an answer to, and that if the number turns out to be wrong, they've taken on the liability and would have to pay whatever amount is owed, even if it's thousands of dollars. And so there ought to be some recompense, is what I hear from them, as to giving that correct number and making certain that everything is accurate. But the General Assembly, as you pointed out a few years ago, actually enacted a statute, and it does say how that process works and what can be charged for it.
Let me throw out a hypothetical to you, Jim, and I'm sure you've heard this one, but and if you want to give me a produced answer, you can, or we can just dive into it hardball style. I'll let you make the decision on that. You've got a management company who then uses another third-party source for preparing the statement of unpaid assessments. If you were to total the cost of the charge from the management company plus that third party for the statement of assessments, and it's more than the statute allows for, is that a violation, or are those two parties allowed to charge the maximum based on the statute?
And not to give a dumb answer, but I don't have enough facts. Follow the statute, and the statute does have a cap. So in my view, the cap is the cap. You don't get to hire three management companies for an association, and all three give you a number, and all three charge a fee. The idea behind the statute was, of course, to get some consistency on the amounts that were charged for certain information.
Jim, you're gonna rile up the legal community right now. Then the transactional closing attorneys are going to be beating down your door for what do we do then is going to be the next question. But we'll save that one for another day.
And by transactional attorneys, if you want to give me an example of an association that has three management companies that are all giving a statement of unpaid assessments, I'm not aware of such a thing. So I don't think I just said anything that was out of the ordinary, and that follow the statute is always our advice to our association clients. And again, the ones we're giving advice to are the associations, because that's who we tend to represent as a firm.
Sure, and just to get a little bit more specific, so you've got a management company who utilizes a third-party document retrieval company, let's say a technology platform based out of, California, we'll say. They charge $300 paid up front before you can ever order the statement of unpaid assessments. Transactional attorney calls the management company and says, hey, this number is in violation of the statute. We don't want to pay it. Provide us with the dues. Management company says, sorry, our policy is we use that third-party platform. 100% of orders are required to go through that platform. What is a transactional attorney supposed to do in that scenario?
And what I hear all the time, Justin, and I hate to say, give me the facts, but even prior to the statute being adopted, I used to always hear horror stories of somebody was charging $2,000 for this, or $1,000 for this, or $500 for this. And sometimes I would just out of curiosity dig into it to see what was actually going on. And most of the time, what was being said was going on is not at all what was going on. There was some completely different reason for why the charges were out there. So if you know specifically of someone who is charging far in excess, I'd be curious, because my understanding over the last couple of years is that most everybody I've heard of in the industry that's a licensed, certified manager, which is who you ought to be using, they're very aware of what the statute is, and I think they're going out of their way to try and follow it.
Okay. No, that's good. Hey, you're on the inside, Jim. I'm following your lead on this one, so I'm going to go with you on that. You talk
and that
about
would fall back on advice we would also give, Justin, is that within the world of associations, there is not a requirement that you have a particular credential to manage an association. However, there are organizations nationally, including the Community Associations Institute, that certify managers, train and certify managers, and managers have different credentials with different years of experience, including some very high credentials. And just like you suggested, seeking out legal representation that is competent, an association of any size, in my view, if they want to have a community manager, which they should, because the laws and the regulations change all the time, and I don't know how anybody could keep up with it without a good manager. Not only do they want to find a manager, but I would strongly encourage them to look for a credentialed manager within the association world, because those are the people who are taking the continuing education. They're the ones who have taken tests to show they know what they're talking about, and they're more likely going to know all of these statutes that you've been asking about.